By the time you read this letter, I will already be dead." Those were the words of a young German soldier in Stalingrad. He knew he wouldn't make it out alive. And he was right. On the front lines, life expectancy was just 24 hours. This is the story of a battle where every second was a miracle, and every corner hid not just an enemy, but a new nightmare. But what few people tell you is that this wasn't just another battle of World War II. It was a theater of horror and strategic brilliance, where ordinary weapons were replaced by shovels, whispers, and raw psychology. Stalingrad was where war revealed its most brutal face, and where thousands died without even understanding why. Here, you'll discover why soldiers wrote letters like that. You'll uncover the stories buried in the rubble, the decisions that cost thousands of lives, and the silent moves that changed the fate of the war. This isn't just about gunfire and trenches. It's about a city turned into a trap, ordinary men who became legends, and a truth few dare to tell. Imagine walking through a ruined city where every corner could be hiding an enemy. Stalingrad, in 1942, wasn't just a battlefield. It was a maze of survival. Bombed-out buildings became improvised fortresses, and soldiers crept through dark corridors like rats searching for shelter. It was a war where no one saw the sky, only rubble and smoke. And in the middle of it all, ordinary men became legends. What made this war unique wasn't just its brutality, it was the intimacy of the combat. It was hand-to-hand. Imagine being so close to the enemy that there was no time to aim. You used whatever was within reach, a knife, a shovel, even a rock. There was no romantic notion of honor, only the most primal instinct: keep breathing. Stalingrad taught a lesson few war manuals ever dare to explain. To survive is also to win. While generals decided the city's fate on maps, soldiers fought for it meter by meter, and every meter was paid for in blood. In that jungle of concrete and debris, the enemy could be upstairs, in the basement, or behind a broken door. The most common sound wasn't gunfire, it was hurried footsteps and heavy breathing. And it was there, in that claustrophobic chaos, that stories of resistance began to emerge. Stories that would change the course of the entire war. Pavlov's house. Amid the chaos of Stalingrad, one ordinary building became a symbol of almost unbelievable resistance. It was just another concrete block. But in that place, 25 Soviet soldiers made a decision. They would not back down. What they did sounds like a war movie. They mounted machine guns in the windows, dug internal passages between rooms, and resisted daily attacks for nearly 60 days. They turned a home into a fortress, and the fortress became legend. The name of the sergeant who led the group was Yakov Pavlov. Pavlov's house, as it came to be known, was so effective that General Chuikov once said, "Pavlov's house killed more Germans than the capture of Paris." Every day, Soviet soldiers had to step outside to clear piles of bodies from the entrance. One building, a handful of men. One decision: nothing gets through. And when you think about the magnitude of that choice, you realize something powerful. It's not the size of your force that matters, but the courage to use it with intelligence. They faced tanks, grenades, and starvation with sheer determination. What few people mention is how these men slept only 2 hours a night, rotating shifts in complete silence. They knew that a single loud breath could mean death. Outside, the enemy tried to surround, to destroy, to break them, but inside, they stood firm as stone. With every failed assault, their emotional resolve grew stronger. And that unity, that mental strength, was just the beginning of what the Soviets were about to show the world. The psychology of death. Imagine being surrounded, starving, freezing, and still having to hear day and night a voice whispering, "Every 7 seconds, one of you dies." This was the invisible weapon the Soviets unleashed on German soldiers. Fear. Loudspeakers hidden among the ruins broadcast funeral messages. accompanied by slow, heavy, haunting music. It was as if the city itself whispered death with every step. This was a war that went beyond the physical. It invaded the mind. It was a brilliantly cruel tactic. Winning with weapons wasn't enough. They had to break the enemy's spirit. Soldiers, already exhausted by hunger and cold, began to doubt their own survival. Some wrote farewell letters without ever being wounded, simply because they felt the end was inevitable. And the human mind, when pushed to its breaking point, begins to collapse. And that, my friend, can be deadlier than any bullet. While the German front was emotionally falling apart, the Soviets seemed to grow stronger by the day. They understood that the real territory to conquer was the mind. The psychological Battle of Stalingrad is rarely told in history books, but it was one of the most decisive. Because an enemy filled with fear stops fighting and starts waiting to fall. But the Soviets still had one final move, a silent strike that would change everything. The final siege, and then came what no one expected. While the world's eyes were fixed on the destruction inside Stalingrad, Soviet generals were planning something much bigger, something invisible. It was Operation Uranus, a pincer movement designed to surround the entire German Sixth Army. Instead of a frontal assault, they closed in from the flanks like claws tightening around prey. Intelligence, patience, and a strategy that would shift the entire course of the war. Around 330,000 Axis soldiers were trapped. And what did Hitler do? He forbade retreat. His order, stay where you are, resist to the last man. It was a death sentence. With no supplies and temperatures dropping to minus 40 degrees Celsius, they froze, fell ill, and died. Some chewed leather from their boots, others ate dirty snow. With each passing day, hope melted away like the bodies left out in the ice. In the end, there was no honor in surrender, only silence. German commander Friedrich Paulus was promoted to field marshal just before the collapse, because no German field marshal had ever surrendered. But he did. It marked the end of the Nazis' greatest offensive in the East, and the beginning of their inevitable downfall. But what happened to Stalingrad after that? Well, that's something few people know, and its echo still lingers in Russian history to this day. Stalingrad wasn't just a battle. It was a symbol of human limits, of cruelty and courage, destruction and defiance. Amid the cold, the hunger, and the constant fear, stories of resistance emerged that still defy the logic of war. Every ruin in that city held a lesson. Every letter written before death reminds us of the true cost of power. And perhaps the greatest message Stalingrad leaves us is this: the world doesn't change only through grand speeches or epic battles. It changes through choices made under pressure by ordinary people in extraordinary moments. The memory of this place isn't just history. It's a warning, a call to understand how we got here, and what may come if we forget what happened there. If this story moved you in any way, if you learned something new, then subscribe to Brothers History and hit the bell. Here, we uncover the webs of power, war, and betrayal that shaped the world, with powerful visuals and unbelievable true stories. And now I ask you, which of these moments of courage or brutality struck you the most?